So we're also learning more about President Trump's wiretapping claims. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer spoke with CBS Radio News' Steve Portnoy to discuss the rift over the issue with the FBI.
I want to ask you about some day of air news.
Sure.
The FBI director went to Capitol Hill this week to talk to a select group of congressional leaders. Multiple outlets, including CBS News, are reporting that he intended to tell the leaders that the FBI did not wiretap Trump Tower. Shouldn't that be the final word on this?
Well, I think that's up to Congress to understand the findings that the FBI had and to look at the totality of what happened. I think that they've got to look at all the evidence that may be out there as far as what happened during the election. But there's a lot of additional questions that have to happen, a lot of things that have come up through news reports and other sources that have suggested activity during the 2016 election. So it shouldn't just be one interview. I think there's a lot that they need to look at, and then they do need to issue a report to us.
Director Comey has been invited by the House Intelligence Committee to testify publicly a week from Monday. If he winds up at the witness table and says publicly what he intended to tell the leaders in private in the gang.
Well, let's be clear. I mean, Steve, one of the things that's interesting is we continue to hear anonymous sources saying that this is what someone said. We actually never actually hear the individual talk themselves or direct quotes. It's always sources close to somebody or people that we believe, and I think it's time that in some cases we do hear directly from the sources.
If Director Comey does say it publicly a week from Monday, is that not risking an embarrassment for the president?
Well, I think there's a lot that needs to get discussed about the 2016 election. We've also had Director Comey brief several people who have unequivocally said, Senator Rubio, Chairman Devin Nunes of the House Intelligence Committee, who said that there was no activity, there was no coordination or no activity, I forgot how it was phrased, or evidence to support these stories that have been ongoing in several outlets about activity with the Russians in the campaign. And yet, where is the credibility there? And it's interesting. People who were briefed over and over again by Director Comey came out and said that they saw nothing to lead them to believe. And so the media kept writing that story for months on end despite that. And yet, in this case, it's let's rush to judgment. So it's interesting to me how there's such a double standard in the media when it comes to, on one story, when people briefed by Director Comey come out and say that there's no evidence there, and the immediate rush to judgment is, well, we're still going to write the same story with some named sources, perpetuating the same false narrative. On the other story, it's, shouldn't we take Director Comey's word that he still has yet to directly address as the final word? It is interesting to me how the double standard the media employs in these two very different stories.
All right, Steven Portnoy is with me now from the White House. That was really interesting, Steven. So clearly the White House is not changing its stance on this wiretapping issue, despite the fact that Director Comey plans to tell lawmakers that there was no wiretapping at all. When I heard that, I thought, they're sort of suggesting that he's not telling the truth, and it certainly is undermining him. What'd you make of it?
Well, listen, you have Sean Spicer saying that despite Director Comey going up and talking to the Gang of Eight, the select group of congressional leaders on the House and Senate side, bicameral, bipartisan leadership, that there was no truth to what the president tweeted on Saturday morning, alleging that his predecessor had wiretapped Trump Tower. Apparently that's not enough for the White House. You heard Sean Spicer in our radio interview say that there are additional questions and that Congress will have to issue a report on all this. The press secretary explains that there's a double standard that the White House sees between the way that the media handles and covers this story with respect to the way that there were reports in the New York Times and other outlets in the fall suggesting that there were some kind of intercepts of communications between those close to President Trump, then candidate Trump, and Russian intelligence agents or officials. And yet now the White House says, where's the beef behind those reports? And apparently the FBI director is telling top members of Congress that there was no wiretap. And so the White House is trying to square that circle at the same time that the official word that seems to be coming down from the FBI and from members of Congress is that there is no smoke and no fire. Still, the president says there ought to be an investigation. The White House is pushing for it, and even today, the press secretary says there are additional questions that only Congress can answer.
Well, I certainly hope that the White House has more information than what turned up in a few reports on this topic. You also spoke to Sean Spicer about Obamacare negotiations. What do you have to say about that?
Well, it's interesting. Another bit of news from our interview, which will air this weekend on the CBS News Weekend Roundup on many CBS radio stations and also on podcasts that you can download on iTunes and other places. The press secretary ruled out any negotiation on tax credits. The pivotal issue for so many conservatives in the House and Senate is this idea of a new entitlement. Refundable tax credits to people who are low income that might exceed the amount of money that's taken out of their paychecks over the course of the year so that they can use that money to go out and buy insurance in the new post-Obamacare world. Many conservatives say that that's a non-starter. Well, the White House spokesman told us in our interview today that that is essential, an essential part of the plan. So if the White House is talking about some movement here and some negotiation that congressional leaders and backed by the president they're willing to engage in, apparently tax credits are not on the table. You have to wonder how congressional Republicans will react to that.
Yeah, that's a biggie. So, Stephen, we are 50 days into the Trump administration. Did you get a sense of how the press secretary feels things are going?
Well, I asked Sean Spicer on this 50th day of the Trump presidency how he deals with the grind of coming to work here at this building in the early hours before we're on the air on television, as just we're coming on the air. And he says that, you know, when you work for President Trump, your day begins early and it ends late. He says that there are days where he is worn down, but he also says that it's an emblem of the extent to which President Trump expects a lot of his people to accomplish what he has set out to. And he even used the phrase, to make America great again.
Yeah, I know certainly a lot of people speculated, especially in the beginning, just how long Sean Spicer would be able to hang on. He's still there. And, you know, we should point out it's a tough job, but it's a job by choice. He's there by choice. CBS Radio News' Steven Portnoy, thank you so much.